My name is Tuure-Eerik Niemi. I'm a master's student here at Columbia University for the program in European History, Politics and Society. And for the last year, I've been writing my thesis project on the autonomy of the European Union as an integration project in international affairs. And for this reason, I've been working on kind of like the intersecting multilateralisms of the United Nations and the European Union. I've been interested in looking at the extent to which the European Union actually presents itself in the international arena as a coherent actor. So, for example, that all of the member states have a unified position on certain resolutions in the United Nations General Assembly. Before joining Columbia, I already did a master's degree in European Union International Relations and Diplomacy at the College of Europe, where I specialized in European neighborhood policy, so basically the relations of the European Union with the different countries to the east and the south of the Union's borders, and especially when it came to Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. And for my perspective then was to understand different Russian and Chinese influences in the neighborhood policy area. So when I came to Columbia and I was really thinking like what is the interesting thing that I can do here in New York, I wanted to kind of like move this research topic to the United Nations and the United Nations world. Also because here at Columbia I was doing courses on United Nations politics. From these perspectives, for me, the interesting question lied on the extent to which the European Union was capable of presenting itself as a coherent actor in international affairs. And especially because the United Nations is such a special organization, as it does not allow regional economic integration organizations as its members, only sovereign states. It was interesting for me to look at the different ways that the member states of the European Union function, work, and negotiate with one another at the context of the United Nations. So I kind of started at looking at these negotiation patterns within the member states themselves that are organized as the delegation of the European Union, first in the Security Council, but then I also kind of shifted away from the Security Council, looking at the budget negotiations of the UN at the Fifth Committee of the General Assembly, and from there I even moved forward. So it's been a long process, kind of like trying to map out what's the little niche that that my research best fits in, and for me it ended up being analyzing patterns of coherence in the General Assembly. The analytically interesting bit was then if we can explain the European Union member states' voting behavior in the United Nations General Assembly by looking at the positions of external powers such as the United States, Russia, and China. And of course, like especially if I looked at the kind of like the current affairs context of my time here in New York and also the previous years, there's been like this speculation of like, for example, Chinese and Russian and even kind of American influence now under the Trump presidency on the European Union's ability to deliver coherence in international affairs. So for the time frame of a study, I decided to look at the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly, which is from 2017 to 2018. And during that time, the General Assembly, I believe it passed 313 resolutions. And the way in which resolutions are passed at the United Nations are either with voting or with consensus. So that leaves with 91 resolutions that are passed by voting, and then I've been looking at the voting records. So I've been retrieving data from the United Nations indexes for the purposes of my study to look at how each and every one of the member states vote on a single resolution, and then also pairing up that data with the positions of Russia, China, and the United States. Writing my thesis and doing my thesis it's been a relatively long process, and it's also been a challenging process where I've been trying to understand like how the different literatures on European Union's foreign policy in general, United Nations policy, how they all kind of like act together and engage with one another. And I think that like the importance of the research that I'm conducting is that that the research that has been on European Union coherence in the General Assembly has mostly looked at the extent to which the EU has been coherent, rather than kind of like trying to see if there are any causal explanations for that, on how can we best explain why the European Union is extremely capable of communicating a united front on certain issues, and why at times, for example, with the global compacts on safe, orderly, and regular migration, the coherence leaves us extremely wanting and lacking. What was really important for me throughout the thesis process was that I could use this experience as one of skills development. Firstly, I think that it was really useful for me to be based in New York for conducting this research, as New York is the home to the headquarters of the United Nations, and to be kind of like having to be capable of having that exposure and also opportunities to engage with top-level professionals from different member states of the European Union and also from the United Nations. I think that was definitely an extremely valuable added advantage of what I did here in New York. And then secondly, to kind of like also to map out different ways to conduct methodological development, because I don't have background in quantitative methodologies, and yet for my thesis I'm working on statistical methods. So that has been like quite exciting for me to go back to my statistics and mathematics textbooks, and I really enjoyed that. It's been a wonderful learning experience, and in a way, like it made sense for me to come and study European politics at Columbia and also in New York for all of these different reasons, especially as so much of the European Union's foreign policy is tied to the transatlantic partnership, and then at the same time for me to broaden my understanding of that partnership with the other relations that are important and maybe a bit more challenging that are with Russia and China.